Today on the podcast, I speak with a delightful mother named Morgana. Morgana is the mother of 3 children, currently aged 7, 5 and 3. I first met Morgana when she was pregnant with her first baby, as she came to see me for pregnancy massages, and we stayed connected throughout all her 3 pregnancy, birth and postpartum experiences. Morgana speaks about the wobbly early days and why having someone there just to focus on their attention on you as the mother is vital. She talks to both the joy and overwhelm and offers a great tool for when things get too much. I love that Morgana shares that she is proud of herself as she has witnessed her own growing up through and with her children, and how she is finally able to see herself in her own wholeness and pursue some of her passions outside of motherhood. Over the 20 years that I have been working with women, there have been countless mothers I have supported that have also taught me so much. And by witnessing their dedication, courage, and tenderness for their families, they have touched my heart. There are also those that leave a really special place in my heart, and Morgana is one of those mothers. I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to the podcast, Morgana. It's lovely to have you on, as I know we go way back, don't we, to before you had your first child.
Yes, that must be 2017.
Wow, there you go. Okay, so tell us who is in your little brood, how you became a mum.
So I have 3 children, Milo, Ruben and Mabel, and they are all about to have their birthdays. So they'll be turning 7, 5 and 3.
That sounds.
And I've got 2 boys and a girl.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly busy.
It is incredibly busy.
So tell us a little bit about when they came into the world. What was your postpartum experience like? And if you need to reflect back on pregnancy, because it's part of the story, feel free to, but just share a little bit with us.
Okay. I guess the first thing I'll say is that each experience was really different. And I learned different things from each process. I had a few medical issues with each pregnancy. So in my first, I had obstetric cholestasis. I needed to be induced. And at the time, the policy in that year was to induce women at 37 weeks on the dot. I had obstetric cholestasis in my 3rd pregnancy 4 years later, and the policies around induction had changed. So I actually made it to 38 weeks and 5 days. And then they induced me. And I had gestational diabetes in my middle pregnancy, and I became insulin dependent. Each of the births were different. During my 2 inductions, which was my first and my 3rd, I needed that epidural. I'm now convinced that the Syntocin creates a really different feeling in the body. And at least for me, like those kind of, I didn't have a relief in between contractions of my uterus. And so it made it much harder to cope with. My second birth, which I went into spontaneous labor, it was kind of, by the book. It was very quick. I didn't have time for an epidural or pain relief, and it felt so different in the body. I really noticed that I had complete relief in between my contractions, so much so that I was able to fall asleep. And that was actually a lot easier to cope with. And so, yeah, I feel like that truly natural birth is something that I could do. But for example, if I was to ever have another child and if I was to be induced, I would probably ask for pain relief immediately.
Yeah. Because you've had the experiences and you know the difference, and it's kind of good
Yeah,
that you did have that middle, experience was different so that you could
yeah,
understand the differences in physiology and how the body works when under
yeah,
pain relief or synthetic hormones to when you're just producing your own hormones.
exactly.
Mm, yeah. So, very different pregnancies, birth experiences. Did that sort of have a flow on to the type of postpartum experiences you had? How were they each unique?
I believe that it did. In my first birth, as I said, I was induced at 37 weeks on the dot, and it kind of didn't go according to plan. Um, I kind of labored okay, but my son, he was born in respiratory distress. Um, and I think that that was partially because the labor was very quick, partially because he was a little bit young. Uh, and also, he had mechanically the cord wrapped around his chest, and it was very stressful um, to receive a blue baby that didn't cry, and an emergency was called, and they took him away. And I just remember sitting there looking at the clock, thinking, like, I didn't know what was going to happen. He had low APGARs. He quickly kind of recovered, and it was kind of, from a medical perspective, quote, fine. He was taken to the NICU for 12 hours, and I was just an absolute mess afterwards. I felt really alone and anxious, and like I didn't know what I was going to do. I remember in that time, like I didn't sleep at all, like while I was waiting for him, which I wish I had done because I hadn't even started caring for him yet. But I was already so exhausted. And so I feel like that, my first experience, I was a very anxious new mum, and I needed help. Like I definitely needed help. I needed help from the hospital. I needed help from my family. I needed help from friends. Um, and then I guess there was that kind of experience. And then just, becoming a mum for the first time is a hugely intense experience and comes with, so many changes, and it can feel quite overwhelming. So like there was kind of two facets to it. And I feel like that first year of being a parent um, was, I think, the hardest, even though reflecting back, I feel like objectively the the experiences that I had weren't as challenging as I knew they could become, if that makes sense. You know, um, it was kind of like a medium tier difficulty year. Um, my second postpartum experience, I had a lovely birth. I really felt that oxytocin. I remember just saying to my husband, "Can you just please hold him? Because I am absolutely going to fall asleep." And so I kind of had this wonderful first few days. I had a huge oversupply issue in my second birth with milk, and that's like a whole other thing. Um, but that hospital experience was pretty positive. He had a tongue tie, but that was kind of quickly corrected. I felt a lot more in control of my hospital stay, and I felt like everybody trusted me more, and that, even nursing staff would listen to me more. And that, I think, is something that is really unfortunate, is that a lot of first time mums are not really listened to. And it's like as soon as you say, "Oh, I've already had a baby," then suddenly it's like, "Oh, well, we'll trust and believe you now." Um, so that's really interesting. And my third, I felt like I think I stayed the least amount of time at the hospital with my daughter Mabel. I was eager to get back to my other children, and I felt very confident in my newborn care skills. So I felt like I didn't need to be taught anything new. I was very assertive. Like, I knew that she had a tongue tie straight away, and that, like, my nipples were blistered immediately, and I was like, this is not what breastfeeding feels like. So, uh, I was able to kind of sort all of that out very quickly, and I felt very confident, and assertive. And I, yeah, interestingly, I by the time I had my third, I was so kind of calm and confident in the role that I just ended up, wearing her all the time in a baby carrier. And she was the calmest baby. And partially, that might be her temperament, but also I was the calmest during that time.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I know that that can raise a lot of emotion as well, being able to go back and reflect on all your different experiences and maybe even sort of picture yourself living it again. Um,
Yeah.
so how did you feel sharing that?
I felt I felt good, actually. It's kind of interesting to think about it, reflecting back, to think about it in hindsight, to see. I kind of felt, talking to you now, like, a bit proud of myself, because, like, it's easy to see, like, how much I kind of grew in the role of being a mother, but also just how I can talk about it now. Like, there would have been a time where I just
Mhm,
absolutely couldn't have talked about my first birth. Um, but, while that experience was very intense, it's not that unique. A lot of people have a very intense or traumatic birth. And I feel like we often don't talk about it.
mm, mm. Hence why I'm doing this podcast, so that we can bring these
Exactly.
conversations out. But um, you should feel very proud of yourself. You've always been amazing, and when you reflect on it and actually believe that too, you should. Yeah, you very much are. You did it.
Yeah.
So, like you said with the first one, a lot
Yeah.
of it is it's a huge experience, right? And as you've
Huge.
said, it's not just that you've birthed a baby, and if that was complicated or there was challenges or hurdles, that makes it even, more difficult to assimilate. But also you've just become a whole new identity.
Absolutely. And that
And
is
that's
the
huge.
most drastic change. Yeah.
Yes. The most drastic change that you just can't really compare to any other time in your life. So
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's a lot to carry. And then when, you know, a lot of the time women are disempowered at that time, unfortunately, by not being taken seriously that they know what's going on with their bodies and that they are the expert of their own feelings and what they're experiencing and what their child needs. And it's really hard. So, what would you say to mothers maybe going through that first experience and feeling that lack of power over their own experience and maybe internalizing it and thinking that they're doing it wrong? They need experts to tell them what to do.
Yeah. I feel like this is a really tough thing. I honestly feel like what you need, if this is your first time, especially, you need someone. Like, it can be a postpartum doula, it can be an experienced friend, but you need someone to be there on the journey with you to help you filter out all of the information, because even within your hospital stay, and everybody has the best of intentions, right? Everybody wants you and your baby to thrive, but you'll receive conflicting advice, and it can be really confusing. Um, and this is at a time where you're going through huge hormonal changes, and you've had, like, no sleep, and your body is tired, and your mind is, you know, feeling things that you've never even known were possible. um, you need someone who is there with you to kind of filter out the information or take charge of, like, the other things that need to be done. Like, you still have to, by the time you get home, you still have to have meals prepared, you still, have washing to do, life goes on. But you need help. And it just feels like, you know, we're kind of sold this lie that we can kind of do it alone, but you absolutely can't. You need someone. And whether that's family or you're paying for that help, like that is just so invaluable to have at least one person or a team just working with you, because it is like the fastest learning you will ever have to do. Plus, there's just all the regular life stuff that continues on.
Mm, yeah, totally. You need someone there that's not about the baby necessarily. It's about
Yeah,
checking in with you. Yeah. Yeah,
yes, exactly.
I had somebody ask me just last night, "My best friend is just having a baby, her first baby, and I don't really know what to do with babies. I've never even held a baby." And I said, "You know what the best thing that you can do is? You can
Yeah,
hold the mother. Don't worry about the baby."
yeah. Everybody's going to be fawning over the baby, but you need support.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I actually, if ever I go to baby showers now or buy a new gift for a new mother, I actually don't buy a baby related item. I buy something nice for the mum.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And that's kind of the way we need to start flipping our mindset is that the baby will be well and truly looked after if the mother feels supported, cared for,
Yeah.
nurtured, heard, validated in her feelings, all of that.
Yeah.
And so that's a really important message. So how has motherhood changed you?
Oh, in so many ways, I feel like it's changed me completely. I feel like, um, I guess, I guess the thing I would say the most is that I feel resilient now, or at least I know that I can be resilient. I know that I've overcome like physical and emotional and mental challenges. And I know that I can advocate for myself and for my children, whereas I probably wasn't that confident before. Um, and some of that might just be aging and kind of growing up. But I think o- once you have this incredible responsibility, that's really like no other, um, you see things differently. And, the small things don't seem nearly as overwhelming anymore because you've experienced like actual high stakes.
Mm,
Um, yeah.
mm, mm. How old were you, if you don't mind me asking, when you had your first child?
I was pretty young. I had just turned 25.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess in kind of the circles I move through, that is on the younger side. And sometimes even now I reflect on it and think, wow, I was so young. I see people who are 25 and they're not close to having a baby.
Yeah.
Um,
I only
but
ask.
I'm really glad.
Yeah, no, and I was young, as you would know too, so I was not even quite 24, and now
Wow.
my oldest son is 24.
Wow,
And
that's
so
amazing.
the thought of him, being a father right now is just absurd, but yeah, I
Yeah,
wonder how much of that. I don't think it's all good and it's not all bad, it's just I haven't regretted it because we've been able to really grow ourselves up along with our children, would you
that's
say?
what I was going to say. You
Mm,
experience so much of life with your children, um, if you're if you end up having them young. And of course there'll be positives and there'll be negatives, but I don't regret it. I'm really happy that I'll get to see a lot of his that my children's lives and that I get to grow with them.
yes. So they're all different. I
They're
am,
all different.
yes, confident of that. Does that mean that you parent them differently, or what are their individual needs?
Um, I'm just going to say, as a blanket answer, yes, because I feel like even if you have every intention of parenting in the exact same way, the context is different. Suddenly once you've had one child, you're a parent, and you have another, you've got your newborn baby, but you've also got your toddler. So their individual needs vary so greatly. I feel like, I as a parent have just tried to show up for the child where they are at the time. But, you know, there are like really specific things, like, say, my second son had a lot of feeding difficulties. So he had like a lot of feeding needs. So I had to feed him in a way that wasn't my first or even second choice. Um, but I had to do that. And say my oldest child has recently been diagnosed with ADHD. And so, talking to a pediatrician, like, there are a lot of specific parenting strategies that are more likely to be effective with children with ADHD. And I feel like, you know, over time, you just kind of grow into that kind of knowledge of how your child needs you to respond. Um, and it can be kind of interesting. Like, when I received the kind of official list of like, these are the best parenting strategies for children with ADHD, it was interesting to see like, oh, my husband and I already do that, because having spent so much time with him, we've kind of learned through trial and error that that is the best and most effective way to reach him.
Mm. Yeah. And once again, it's really bringing it back to we are the experts of our own children, even though
Yeah,
there are times where we, might need to seek the help of outside resources or expert opinions. But at the end of the day, we know our children best.
absolutely. I would say also, in terms of baby care and that whole postpartum period, I feel like I was the most, even though my intention was to be super responsive with my first, I still kind of relied on, uh, the systems to support me, and they can be very helpful. But like with my third, I felt so confident in responding to her needs that I just really, it's not that I did anything differently. I think it was just my confidence.
Yeah. Sounds like you
That
trusted yourself more.
Yes, yes, for
Yeah.
sure. And I trusted myself more with the second, but definitely by the time it was the third, it was like, you know, please absolutely do not come and wake me up and my baby up in the middle of the night. Like, I will freak out if that happens.
Yeah. 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 So currently in the season of motherhood that you're in,
Yeah.
what are the things that you're most challenged by, would you say?
It's interesting. I feel like school
Mm,
has been a big change. So the school day, first of all, is not very long. It's very
mm,
short. So kind of managing in this season of motherhood, I'm finding the most challenging, like managing everybody's schedules. And we've got a large family, obviously, but like everybody goes to preschool or school or daycare and has extracurricular activities and has different, you know, things that they need to do, like homework, um, practicing for certain like roles or concerts. Like, it's
mm,
just, it's more of a scheduling issue. Like, it's no longer about like, let's keep these children fed and safe, and
mm.
it's more the kind of higher order, like, oh, should we continue with tennis lessons because maybe they'll be really good at tennis, or should we you know do OT because their handwriting is not at the same level as their peers. Um, how do I talk to my child about friendships? Um, yeah, it's really interesting. I'm finding that, like, the older my children get, the kind of the less, not it's not that you're not involved anymore, but suddenly they're spending less and less time with you every second. So you're not as in control of every little thing. Not that I ever really was in control. I like to think that I was, but I wasn't. Um, yeah, so that's what I would say. I would say that school and scheduling and just making it fit, getting everything done in the day. I mean, that hasn't really changed, but just the nature of what needs to happen in the day has changed.
Yeah. You feel a lot more scheduled when your children are at school too, because
Absolutely.
realistically, you've got 10 to 2 or something. You haven't got 6 hours. And I know a lot of mums think, oh, that's the time I'm going to start a new course, or then I'll go back to work when my children are in school. Or, there's this feeling that we're going to get a big, big chunk of our life back. But often it's busier. It's much
Yeah.
busier. It's much more chaotic. As you said, you're navigating so many different activities and each need and each pickup. And so it can be a really big challenge. And I think that's something we don't talk about either is that this is another huge transition for a mother, is that she now has school-age children, and how does that make her feel? And does she feel what's her identity now? As you said, you've got to let go a little bit. It's just the way it is because they're moving amongst other people more than, a big chunk of their day. So, yeah, it's another huge transition for a mother that deserves a little bit of compassion and thought about how does this affect me? What can I now do in my day to feel like I've got a little bit of me? So, with that in mind, what do you do that fills your cup?
I feel like that's a very interesting question. I'm probably still not the best at prioritizing myself. Um, Things that I do to help me feel good is I've tried to start exercising as much as I can. I feel like that feeling physically strong in my body is what helps me kind of get through each day. So like doing exercise, I really like doing classes, um, like kind of like bar or Pilates classes. I find that way more fun than just going to the gym. Other things
Same.
I do for me, I've been volunteering as a ethics teacher at my son's primary school. So during the kind of the scripture part of the week, they have an option at my son's school of doing scripture or non-scripture or ethics, which is just kind of like critical thinking skills and not affiliated with any particular school of thought. So I've been doing that, and that has really been filling my cup. I kind of thought like, oh, I need to move away from being with children all the time, but actually, it's been really enjoyable.
Mm.
Um, Other things I do for me are I really like learning. So I'm always doing, you know, a course or learning about something new. And I love listening to information. So that's like, I think, how I learn the best. Instead of sitting down and reading, I will listen to audio of whatever the topic is I'm learning about. And I usually do that while doing housework so that I can kind of get things more than one thing done at the same time. Um, but that definitely makes me feel like I've achieved something for me while I'm kind of slogging out, whatever has to be done to keep the house functional.
Yeah, you feel very productive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah, but I can relate. I think we're not totally unlike one another, to be honest. Is that often what I
Yeah,
do to fill my cup is to learn more things about this whole area of motherhood. And
yeah,
like, it doesn't feel like work to me. It actually feels exciting and enjoyable and fascinating, and I feel warm and fuzzy. So yeah, it's different for everyone, but,
for sure.
it's just finding what you enjoy, and also I know that you did have a little bit of a background in teaching, didn't you? Or you were on your
I
way.
do.
Should I bring that
Yeah,
up? So
yeah,
I'm
you can.
guessing that,
Derailed.
yeah, this probably really satisfies that part of you too in some way, that
Yeah,
you are achieving that goal in one form or another of being
yeah,
involved in the school system. Yeah.
yeah. And that has been really helpful. I think I did spend a lot of years feeling like I couldn't do it. And it honestly, it was only like a couple of weeks. And just that knowledge of like, oh, I actually, you know, I'm stepping into this more kind of this role that I haven't been doing for a long time. Like, I've still got it. I can do this. I'm a competent adult, you know. Um, that's been amazing.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm really happy you're doing that. So we've talked a little bit about what gets you through the hard days is exercise, would you say? Yeah.
Exercise. Yeah, lots of cups of herbal tea, fancy herbal teas, really, I guess, fill my cup quite literally.
Yeah.
Um, and that is something that I've done for a really long time. Um, Sometimes when things feel just so overwhelming, and like maybe I'm really frustrated with, you know, whatever's happening, like with the children in particular. I don't like feeling frustrated with my children, but it happens, of course. um, I try and I do this thought experiment with myself. Um, and I think, I'm at my wit's end. I'm trying to put them to bed. Like, it's not working. It's taken too long. And I think, imagine that you are a time traveler and you have come back just to spend an evening with your young children again, just to feel what that's like. And that kind of gives me a bit of distance. And I guess that kind of sentimental feeling of like, wow, this moment is still valuable and amazing, even though it's hard.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a really good thing that I hope a lot of mums get out of that and can maybe try and practice that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. All right. So what would you like other mothers to know about um well about all the different seasons, I guess. So say a mother is struggling, she's got 3 children, under 10 even, and they're all at different stages, and she's just feeling completely overwhelmed and and perhaps a little disconnected from some of her children as as they're pulling away from her and more interested in, friendships at school and things like that, or not telling her very much at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah,
She's
that's tough.
feeling it. Yeah, it's tough.
It's tough. It's a bit of a black box. Yes. What I would like, I guess, other mothers to know is that you're not alone. It feels very isolating, but actually most mums are experiencing, some level of the same, if not very similar feelings to you. So I guess I would encourage anyone to reach out to others. Like, I always tell new mums, like, join a mother's group, or find some people that you can connect with that are like-minded and that are experiencing similar things to you at the same time, because you'll see that like a lot of what you're experiencing, while it is very difficult or tough, it's quite normal. And just hearing that other people are experiencing that too, like for me, I found that really helpful. It's like, okay, I'm not doing anything wrong. Like, this is just a stage that I will move through, and then there'll be a new stage that I'll have to move through. But you know that feeling of connection to others, I feel like, is really important. So, like, whether that's joining a mother's group, or I don't know, like joining a meetup, or doing some of the social baby activities, which are just actually a really great way to meet other mums that you can have a coffee with. Um, yeah, and reaching out to other parents, I think, is key, or a support person, or someone you trust. Just, you don't have to slog it out alone. And the other thing is, like, go outside every day, just even if it's for a walk. Even if your baby is screaming, it somehow seems better outside when you're on a walk.
Mm.
And that's really important. Like, you don't have to stay at home the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be hard when a mother is feeling very flat, maybe
Yeah.
depressed. But it is kind of one of the things that is going to maybe be her pathway to feeling better, is even
Yeah.
just the outside, but also just knowing that there's so many other mothers that would feel the same as she does
Yeah.
and actually want to be supportive. I think
Yeah.
we also get very isolated in our thinking that nobody will really get my situation or understand what I'm going
Yeah.
through. But you'd
And
be
there can be a lot of
surprised.
shame. Like, there can be a
That's
lot of,
right.
like, am I a horrible parent? Like, am I not enjoying this in the way that I should be? You know, do I sometimes we always love our children, but sometimes we don't like them or the choices they make, and that can be really difficult. Um, but yeah, I think just the more you can talk to other people, other parents, the more you'll see that, you know, your experiences are very similar to others and you can support each other.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and always seek help, professional help if you're feeling, that things are not getting better.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are some mothers that I've chatted with that have become, as we know, motherhood is a very undervalued, not a validating role. And there's so much invisible work, you know.
So much.
And it's, you know, mothers have to take on so many roles. They're carers, they're teachers, they're trainers, they're doctors, they're mental health experts, they're everything for that child. They're the world, their world. And then I've spoken to some mothers that feel even resentful towards the fact that it is such a relentless task and there
Yeah,
doesn't
I
seem
get
to
that.
be a lot of appreciation. And then their husbands or partners are off to work. And
I know.
sometimes there's a bit of like resentment that the partner is able just to resume their life as if nothing happened and kind of come back to all the good things or, the weekend activities. Have you ever felt that, I wonder? And
Yeah,
how do you manage those feelings?
I definitely have. Absolutely. I feel like I've been super lucky. My husband is just like incredibly supportive and is a really, really active parent. And like, I really appreciate everything he does. But the reality is, like, I spent more hours with the children overnight doing the hard stuff. And it can feel a bit unequal or uneven. And it can also feel a little bit like, because so much of the work, as you said, is invisible or like a mental load thing, it can be missed by your partner. Like, they may not realize just how much you are doing um, for the family. And so, yeah, I think it's really important to talk to your partner about actually how much thinking and planning you're putting into every single thing. Like, what it takes to pack a nappy bag to go out, like what what kind of dinner prep you do, or when you're going grocery shopping, like all the different things that you have to think about, like, this child loves berries and this child wants cucumbers only, and there's a lot of information that they may not be aware that you are holding. um yeah.
Yeah, it's a communication, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like over time, I guess I've been lucky, but like definitely with my first baby, I definitely took on like 80% of the care. Um, as I had more children, my husband needed to do more because I was unavailable or less available. Um, and so I feel like we've really grown together and we've really learned so much about how we work as a team. Yeah, I feel like having regular check-ins is really important. Actually, on this note, I've just in the last 6 months, my husband and I have finally started going out again on fortnightly dates. And my mother-in-law very kindly accepts looking after all three and putting them to bed, which is honestly no easy task. I don't even like to do it by myself. So she's a powerhouse. But yeah, having that time to reconnect with my husband has been really amazing. And at first I was like, oh, we don't have time for that. But actually, when we made the time, it really kind of not that it was anything to improve, but like it strengthened our kind of
Absolutely.
our relationship. And I think like, you can talk a little bit more at ease. And I think he understands now finally like how actually difficult it is to take on that primary carer role.
Mm.
Um, and like there have been times where he's taken it on too. Like I've gone away to visit my elderly grandparents, and like he's been the primary carer for several days. And um, I feel like now he gets it, but it honestly did take time. And I feel like there's a lot of anger that, especially women or the primary carer have towards the other partner who might be the one going out to work, because they don't understand. And if they haven't experienced it themselves, you know, they probably can't access just how intense
Mm.
it can be.
Yeah, I don't think it's always intentional or,
No.
it really, yeah, it's just as simply as being quite ignorant and not really living that experience, so not fully understanding. And I think if the communication is not going well with the couple,
Yeah.
they're not getting their point across, even just making a note, even writing down every
Yeah.
single task you do in a day and using that to sit down with your partner and just show, just how much is involved, right down to we're on our last toilet roll, so I will need to put that on the shopping list.
Yeah.
Oh, we're missing, cinnamon from this latest dish, so that will need to be gotten. It's just the little things, as you said, like the different dietary needs or dietary preferences of your children. This one likes margarine on their sandwich and this one doesn't. It's all those little things. I remember going away back in, the primary school days. And when I got back, my son said to me, Mum, there was nothing in my lunchbox. And so my husband, it didn't even
There was
cross his
nothing.
mind that he had to
Didn't
pack
pack a lunch. Oh,
no,
no.
he's like, "Mum, there's nothing in my lunchbox." So like, oh my
I can
god.
so picture that happening though.
It is, and you think surely that's common sense, but it's just not
But
a
yeah, if
it's
they
not a
don't have the
practice.
practice.
No,
Yeah.
it's not a practice habit. So it literally is, you can't expect them to know or read your mind. You really do have to spell it out. This is how much is
Yeah.
involved. Yeah.
I think that's really important. And I think a lot of, primary carers really hold that resentment. But like if you're not actually communicating the level of tasks that you're doing and thinking about, they may not have any idea.
Mm,
Just like your husband who didn't know that you had to pack a lunch, like that would seem so obvious to a lot of people. It's like, I think my husband went out one day with our 6-month-olds and like didn't take any nappies,
mm,
like
mm.
it's just they may not actually know.
Yeah. It just doesn't cross their mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. So what are you loving the most about being a mum right now?
Um, I am at the moment, and this is kind of interesting. At the moment, I'm loving my own personal growth
Mm,
because I feel like having children is a little bit like looking in a mirror sometimes, the positives and maybe the negatives. And as my children get older, I can really see traits in myself that say I want them to work on, and so I work on it on myself, if that makes sense. Yeah. So
love
I
that.
feel like, yeah, at the moment I'm in a pretty it's pretty calm at the moment. And I feel like I'm finally getting a bit more on top of things. Like I'm trying to declutter my house at the moment, which is, a whole mission in itself. Um, but I'm loving how much more the children give back now, like now that they can speak and now that they have, ideas that they can express. It's just so interesting and fun to spend time with them, and to hear their opinions. And like, don't get me wrong, like sometimes it's like I feel like I'm going crazy and I need a break. But um, it's yeah, I'm enjoying this time, and I'm really looking forward to my second son starting primary school, because I feel like he's really ready, and I feel like that'll him and his brother are really, really close, and I feel like that'll really add another element to their relationship. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah. And I can see in you, as we've said, like over my many, many years of working with women, there are always some mothers that I feel even more deeply connected with and have a special place in my heart. You're one of them. And it's
Oh,
been so beautiful to watch your journey, having the three children and
yeah,
seeing. I've also seen growth in you in various ways, but I haven't seen you for a while, and so I can see a shift in you at the moment in that little bit of, just being able to flourish in you, who you are, not
yeah,
as consuming the parenting, because obviously it's okay to say, keep a bit of yourself and go and do all the self-care things, but it is hard in those early years. It is very consuming. It's not
yeah,
as easy as it sounds. It's something that you've got to work really hard at if you do want to have a little bit of me time. But now I can feel that, yeah, you've really come through maybe some of the hardest times. Of
I
course,
feel like that.
yes,
Yeah,
like through the trenches. Of course, we have our ups and downs and hurdles, each stage. But this is a time where you get a little bit of your autonomy back and you can
yeah,
get a bit more into yourself. And I also love, because I've experienced this myself, is how much I have grown through what I've learned from my children. Um,
yeah,
and that's just beautiful. And it's, I think it's such a beautiful, unique opportunity to grow yourself up, as I
yeah,
said, because I think there's no bigger personal development program than being a parent,
exactly. Yeah.
basically.
And then, some kind of trait or quirk, might be staring right back at you, and you kind of see it from the outside and think, "Oh my goodness,"
And it can trigger you at first. It can, because if
For
it's
sure.
unresolved about you or something that at that age, maybe particularly more with Mabel, 'cause she's a girl. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've like felt that because you've maybe seen yourself at different stages. I know she's still very young. Um,
Yeah. I feel like that happened to me definitely in my son's first year of primary school, because, like, I have a lot of memories from my own first year of primary school, and that was really triggering, and, like, I had to move through a lot of things,
mm,
like, even as simple as going to the athletics carnival and seeing, like, my son is not particularly athletic, so he came dead last in every race, and just that feeling of, like, "Oh my goodness, I didn't wanna be here at the athletics carnival then, and I don't wanna be here now," you know? It's
yeah,
interesting.
wow. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's all those little things. It's like, the moments where you feel your child might have been excluded from something, and it kind of triggers a time where you felt that way, or that
Yeah.
they didn't get it right the first time, or the second or the third time, and you feel, deeply. But that is part of their growth as well. We can't catch their every fall, but
No, and that's
yeah.
been a hard thing to learn for me.
I'm still learning, but you
Yeah.
do have to let go.
Yeah,
Not now, yours are still young, but yeah,
yeah,
there's so much to learn about yourself, through raising your children. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So anything you'd like to add, or end with something that you'd really love to tell mums who need to hear your
Um,
words?
I guess, like, just trust yourself more, because it's funny, like, the more children I had, the, like, less confident I felt telling anybody anything definitively about parenting, because your situation is gonna be unique, in so many ways. And you're the person who is there all the time. Like, your opinion matters. How you feel about the situation matters. Like, really trust your instincts, you know, seek help. Absolutely. But, if something doesn't feel right, then look for another solution, really, because you don't have to be stuck in whatever it is you're going through. It could be feeding, it could be sleeping, it could be whatever. Like, there will be another methodology that may work better for you. And so kind of trust your instinct about that.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting how you say the more we become, an authority, the less we feel like we can give advice.
Yeah.
It's true, isn't it? Like, as soon as somebody feels that they've become an expert, usually it's the opposite. They want to give everybody advice. But in this case, we have that appreciation that every parent's style is different, every circumstances is different, every child's different,
You just don't know.
you just don't know. Yeah. And so, yeah, trust that. Thank you
Yeah.
for this very nourishing conversation. I
Oh,
hope.
you're so welcome. I'm sorry, my dog is now losing his mind.
Is it your dog? Yeah.
It's the dog,
Yeah,
yeah.
I thought,
Barking.
I thought
Sorry.
so, but I wasn't entirely
Yeah.
sure. All right, I will let you go. Thank you for your time, and
Thank you.
all the beautiful work that you do as a mum.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited that you've started this podcast. It's very cool.
Yeah, postpartum is forever. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and that it offered something helpful to your own mothering experience. If you are a pregnant woman or know someone who is, head over to my website to receive your free copy of the postpartum checklist and contact list. And if you'd like to be better prepared for your postpartum, both practically and mentally, purchase the Peaceful Postpartum ebook, a 52-page interactive guide on what you need to know and what matters most in postpartum. And so that we can get these conversations out to more mothers, I'd be grateful if you could like, share, and review this podcast, and we'll see you next time.